Did you hear about the CEO, a man with 2 decades of experience navigating the shark-infested waters of corporate finance, who lost $47 million of his company's money because of a single, cleverly worded email? Or the AI expert, a woman who literally designed systems to detect fraud, who fell for a voice clone scam of her own boss, wiring away nearly $250,000? If raw intelligence is supposed to be our shield, our protection against deception, then why do the sharpest minds fall for the oldest tricks in the book? It's a question that kept me up at night for 30 years in the interrogation room. The answer is unsettling. It's because their intelligence is the very thing the manipulator uses against them. They believe they're playing chess when the con artist is playing a completely different game, one that targets the ego, not the intellect. Today, I'm going to pull back the curtain. I'm going to show you the psychological blind spots that even geniuses miss, the real tactics manipulators use to bypass your logical brain, and the defenses, inspired by decades of FBI casework and my own time in the box, that you can start using the second this video ends. The first and most dangerous blind spot is what psychologists call the bias blind spot. It's the simple, arrogant belief that you are less biased than other people. Smart people are especially susceptible to this. They've spent their entire lives being rewarded for being right, for seeing patterns others miss. Their brain builds a powerful narrative. I am objective. I see things clearly. This makes them uniquely vulnerable because they stop searching for their own biases. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Julian. Julian was a quantitative analyst, a genius with algorithms, one of the sharpest minds on Wall Street. He was brought in on a massive internal fraud case. His partner of 10 years had been cooking the books, siphoning off millions. When we sat down with Julian, he was in a state of shock. How could I not see it? He kept asking. The answer was simple. He was so convinced of his own logical superiority that he never applied that logic to the person sitting right next to him. His partner showered him with praise, constantly telling him, "Julian, you're the only one who really gets it." This fed his ego and neutralized his analytical mind. He saw his partner not as a collection of data points to be analyzed, but as an admirer who confirmed his own brilliance. The manipulator used Julian's intelligence as a shield for his own crimes. Think about it from a psychological standpoint. Your brain is a pattern-matching machine, but it's also lazy. It wants to conserve energy. Once it labels something as trusted or vetted, it stops spending resources analyzing it. For a highly intelligent person, their own judgment is often the first thing they label as trusted. They stop questioning themselves. This is where the danger lies. A practical example. It mass the doctor who dismisses a patient, a self-reported symptoms, because it does not fit the textbook diagnosis he already decided on. It's the lawyer who underestimates the opposing counsel because she didn't go to a top-tier school. They were so sure of their own map that they don't realize they in the wrong territory entirely. So, let me ask you this, and be honest with yourself. Have you ever dismissed a warning or a piece of advice from someone you considered less informed, simply because you felt you knew better? Have you ever had a gut feeling that something was off, but silenced it with your own logic? That's the bias blind spot at work. It's the little voice of arrogance that whispers, "You're too smart to be fooled." That whisper is the manipulator's favorite sound. The second deadly sin of the intelligent mind is the overconfidence effect. This is different from the bias blind spot. The bias blind spot is about thinking you're more objective than others. Overconfidence is about trusting your own logic and judgment to an extent that becomes a liability. The higher your IQ, the more faith you have in your own cognitive machinery. You trust your brain to solve any problem, to reason your way out of any corner. But here's the rub. Manipulators don't target your reasoning. They target your emotions. And emotion is a backdoor that bypasses all that beautiful, logical hardware. When emotion kicks in, your IQ score becomes irrelevant. The classic, tragic example is the legion of sophisticated investors who lost everything to Bernie Madoff. These weren't naive people. They were hedge fund managers, acclaimed architects, successful entrepreneurs, brilliant minds who had built fortunes through shrewd calculation. Yet they handed over their life's work to a man running a scam so simple it was almost insulting. Why? Overconfidence. They trusted their own gut feeling about Bernie. They trusted their ability to read people. Their success in their own fields created a powerful sense of intellectual invincibility. They thought, I'm a smart person, I've made great decisions my whole life, and I feel good about this decision. Therefore, it must be a good decision. They mistook a feeling for a fact. Let me tell you about a case I consulted on involving a surgeon, Dr. Alistair Vance, an absolute titan in his field, a man who could literally hold a life in his hands and rebuild it with breathtaking precision. His confidence in the operating room was legendary and frankly necessary. But that confidence didn't stay in the OR. He met a smooth-talking investment advisor at his country club, a man who spoke with great authority about market trends and exclusive opportunities. Alistair didn't do a deep dive into the man's credentials. He didn't hire a third party to vet the funds. Why? Because he trusted his own judgment. He was a genius, a celebrated surgeon. He believed his superior intellect gave him a superior ability to judge character. He made the fatal mistake of assuming his expertise in one complex field transferred to another. He ended up losing nearly his entire retirement fund. In the interrogation room, the principle is the same. I've seen brilliant suspects, masterminds of intricate crimes, confess because we didn't attack their logic. We attacked their pride. We'd create a scenario that made them feel smarter by confessing than they would by staying silent. Their confidence in their ability to outsmart us was the very trap that caught them. The psychological mechanism here is called effective forecasting. It's our brain's attempt to predict how we'll feel in the future. Smart people often believe their logical prowess makes them better at this. They think, I'll feel stupid if I pass on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So they jump in. But their emotional forecast is clouded by the manipulator's manufactured urgency and appeal to their ego. A real-world habit? It's the tech founder who is brilliant at coding but makes terrible hiring decisions because he trusts his vibe check on people instead of conducting thorough background checks. His confidence in his technical skills bleeds into an unearned confidence in his social intuition. Here's the question you need to ask yourself. In what area of your life are you an undisputed expert? Now, in what other unrelated area are you applying that same level of confidence without the same level of expertise? Your confidence can be your greatest asset, but left unchecked, it digs a blind spot so big a manipulator can drive a truck right through it. Let's talk about a pair of psychological traps that often work in tandem: confirmation bias and the appeal to authority, which includes its cousin, social proof. Confirmation bias is your brain's tendency to cherry-pick information that confirms what you already believe. It's the internal voice that says, "See, I was right." The appeal to authority and social proof are the external validators. This is the pressure that comes from a respected figure telling you what to think, or the feeling that if everyone else is doing it, it must be the right thing to do. For smart people, this combination is devastating. Their sharp minds are excellent at finding evidence to support a conclusion. So if a manipulator can just plant the seed of that conclusion, the victim's own brain will do the rest of the work. We see this constantly in high-stakes business deals. Remember Theranos? The board was stacked with incredibly powerful, intelligent, and experienced people. Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, decorated generals. These were not fools. But Elizabeth Holmes presented a compelling narrative. A revolutionary technology poised to change the world, backed by a charismatic, turtleneck-wearing genius. This planted the seed. The board members wanted it to be true. So their brains, guided by confirmation bias, started looking for reasons to believe. They focused on the vision, the ambition, the pedigree of the other board members. The appeal to authority was overwhelming. If a former Secretary of State is on board, they thought, who am I to question this? The social proof snowballed. If everyone in this room, all these brilliant people are nodding along, it must be safe. They actively ignored the red flags, the secrecy, the lack of peer-reviewed data, the evasive answers, because that information contradicted the story they had already bought into. Their intelligence was used not to uncover the truth, but to build a more elaborate justification for the lie. I once worked a case involving a massive accounting fraud at a well-respected nonprofit. The CEO was a pillar of the community, a charismatic man who spoke with immense authority. For years, the CFO had a gnawing feeling that the numbers weren't adding up, but every time she raised a concern, the CEO would calmly reassure her, often in front of the board. He'd say things like, "That's a good question, but you're forgetting the amortization schedule we discussed," using jargon to sound authoritative. The rest of the board would nod, and the CFO would back down. The social proof of the nodding board and the authority of the confident CEO were enough to make her doubt her own valid concerns. She later told me, "I felt like I was the crazy one. How could I be right when all these smart, successful people thought everything was fine?" Psychologically, this is rooted in our tribal past. Disagreeing with the leader or the group was dangerous. It could get you ostracized, which was a death sentence. So, our brains are wired with a powerful urge to conform. We get a little hit of dopamine when our beliefs align with those of our tribe. A manipulator exploits this. They create a tribe of believers, even if it's just an illusion, and make you feel like you'll be left out in the cold if you don't join. They create an authority figure, whether it's a fake expert or just a person with a confident tone, to make you outsource your critical thinking. Think about it. Are you more likely to try a new restaurant if it has thousands of five-star reviews? That's social proof. Are you more likely to trust a medical opinion from a doctor in a white coat? That's the power of authority. So, reflect on this. When was the last time you went along with a group decision? Either at work or with friends, even when your gut told you it was a mistake. Have you ever accepted something as true simply because it was stated by an expert, without verifying it for yourself? Recognizing that urge to conform is the first step to overriding it. Type "Continue" to receive the next section. Now that we've examined the vulnerabilities inside your own mind, let's turn to the external weapons a manipulator will use against you. These are the active tactics, the scripts they run to exploit those blind spots. The first and most fundamental is pretexting. This is the art of creating a believable scenario, a fabricated context, to get you to lower your guard and volunteer information. A good pretext isn't just a lie, it's an entire performance. The manipulator creates a role for themselves: a bank official, a tech support agent, an auditor from corporate, and a plausible reason for their inquiry. The more detailed and professional the pretext, the more likely your brain is to accept it without question. Think back to the AI voice scam I mentioned. The scammers didn't just clone the CEO's voice and say, "Wire me money." The pretext was specific. The fake CEO called the executive claiming he was in the final, confidential stages of a major acquisition. It was urgent, secret, and had to be done before the market closed. He used industry-specific jargon. He created a world, and in that world, wiring $243,000 immediately was the only logical thing to do. The victim wasn't tricked by a voice, he was tricked by a story. His brain was so busy processing the details of the fabricated emergency that it never stopped to question the foundation of the story itself. This tactic is often paired with a devastatingly effective one: the fear relief cycle. This is a classic interrogation and high-pressure sales technique, and it's brutally effective. First, the manipulator induces a state of high anxiety or fear. Then, just as the panic is about to overwhelm you, they offer you the one and only solution, a solution that, conveniently, requires you to do exactly what they want. Your brain, flooded with the stress hormone cortisol, becomes desperate for relief. When the solution is presented, The rush of relief is so powerful that it short-circuits your critical thinking. You become incredibly suggestible. I remember a particularly nasty scam we investigated targeting professionals, doctors, lawyers, architects. They'd get a call from someone claiming to be from the IRS. The pretext was perfect. The caller had their social security number, their business address. The fear was immediate and intense. There's a warrant for your arrest for tax evasion. Officers are on their way to your office right now. Just as the victim's heart is about to pound out of their chest, the caller offers the relief. However, we can put a hold on the warrant if you pay the outstanding balance immediately via a wire transfer. I can walk you through it. The relief of being offered a way out of this sudden nightmare is so profound that these highly intelligent individuals would drain their bank accounts without a second thought. The fear of public humiliation and professional ruin completely hijacks their rational mind. The psychological principle at play is simple. Under acute stress, your brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, reason, and impulse control, starts to go offline. The amygdala, the primitive fight or flight part of your brain, takes over. You're no longer thinking, you're just reacting. The manipulator creates the crisis and then sells you the cure. It's a habit you can see in everyday life, too. A pushy salesperson might say, "This offer expires in 1 hour, and the price will double. You'll kick yourself if you miss out." Then they slide the contract over and say, "Just sign here, and we'll lock in this incredible deal for you." So, ask yourself this. Have you ever made a hasty decision in response to an urgent warning or a sudden crisis? Did the person who delivered the bad news also happen to be the only person offering the solution? Learning to recognize that cycle, the sudden spike of fear followed by a convenient escape route, is like installing a firewall in your mind. It gives you the space to pause and ask, who really benefits from this solution? Next on the Manipulator ICAS Toolkit are 2 techniques that exploit our fundamental human wiring for consistency and reciprocity. They are the foot-in-the-door technique and the quid pro quo. They are subtle, patient, and they work by turning your own social instincts against you. The foot-in-the-door technique is based on a simple psychological principle. People want to be consistent. If you agree to a small, harmless request, you are far more likely to agree to a larger, more significant request later. Each yes becomes a psychological anchor, making it harder to say no the next time without feeling inconsistent. In the world of corporate espionage, this is textbook. We tracked a spy inside a major tech firm for months. He didn't walk in on his first day and try to access the company's core intellectual property. His first move was to ask a colleague, "Hey, I'm having trouble connecting to the guest Wi-Fi. Could you help me out?" It's a small, reasonable request. Who would say no? A week later, he'd ask the same colleague, "My permissions on the marketing drive seem to be messed up. Could you just log in for me quickly so I can grab this one file?" Again, a seemingly minor request. The colleague, having already helped him once, feels a subconscious pressure to be consistent and helpful. This escalated over 2 months, from small favors to bigger ones, until the colleague was essentially giving the spy free rein with her credentials. She was manipulated not by a single grand deception, but by a dozen tiny yeses that paved the way for a catastrophic breach. She never saw the pattern, she only saw a series of individual, reasonable requests. Then, you have the quid pro quo, or a favor for a favor. This exploits our deep-seated need for reciprocity. When someone does something for us, we feel a powerful social obligation to do something for them in return. Manipulators weaponize this. They will do you an unsolicited favor, something you didn't even ask for, to create a social debt. They are putting a credit in the favor bank that they intend to cash in later, at a time of their choosing, for a price much higher than the original favor. Let me give you a classic example from my files. A young, ambitious executive, I'll call him Mark, was struggling with a quarterly report. A senior colleague, a man known for being a bit of a shark, came over and said, "Looks like you're in the weeds there. I had a similar project last year. Here, let me show you a template that will save you hours. He spends 20 minutes helping Mark, offers some brilliant advice, and Mark is incredibly grateful. A month later, the senior colleague comes to Mark's desk. "Hey Mark, I'm in a bit of a jam. I need to know the preliminary sales figures for the new product launch for a presentation. I know they're not public yet, but if you could just give me the ballpark numbers, it would be a huge help. You owe me one, right?" Mark feels trapped. The man helped him when he was struggling. The social obligation is immense. Providing those numbers is against company policy, but the psychological pressure to repay the debt is often stronger. The manipulator offered a small, low-cost favor to get high-value, confidential information in return. This isn't just in business. It happens in our personal lives all the time. The friend who always insists on paying for coffee, only to later ask for an unreasonably large favor. The neighbor who mows a strip of your lawn unasked, and then asks you to watch their unruly dog for a week. They are creating a debt. So here are the questions for you. Think of a time you agreed to something you were uncomfortable with because you felt you owed the person. Did they initiate the original favor? And think about the slippery slope. Can you identify a situation where a series of small agreements led to a final commitment you regretted? Understanding these mechanisms isn't about becoming cynical. It's about recognizing the game so you can choose whether or not you want to play. Now, we arrive at the tactics that blend timeless human manipulation with cutting-edge technology, and one that is as old as time itself. First, let's address the new monster in the room: deepfakes and digital tactics. For all of human history, we have been able to trust, on a fundamental level, our own senses. We believe what we see and hear. But that foundation is cracking. AI-powered deepfakes, voice cloning, and hyper-targeted social media profiling are creating a new reality where our senses can be turned against us with terrifying precision. The danger here isn't just the technology, it's that our brains are not evolved to defend against it. When you hear the voice of your boss or see a video of a loved one, your brain's trust circuits fire automatically. The critical thinking part of your brain has to work overtime to even consider the possibility that it's a fake. The $243,000 AI voice scam is the perfect case study. The executive who wired the money wasn't an idiot. He was conditioned by a lifetime of experience to believe that if he heard his boss's voice, with his specific cadence and tone, it was his boss. The scammers exploited a cognitive shortcut. They didn't have to convince his logical brain, they only had to fool his auditory senses for a few minutes. This is the new frontier of social engineering. Manipulators can now scrape your social media to understand your personality, your vulnerabilities, your relationships, and then craft a digital deception. A fake email from a friend, a direct message from a supposed colleague that is perfectly tailored to you. They can create a sense of familiarity and trust before the manipulation even begins. Now, let's contrast that with a tactic that needs no technology, a weapon that has been in the manipulator's arsenal for millennia: love bombing. This is the act of overwhelming a target with attention, affection, praise, and flattery to quickly lower their defenses and gain control. It's most often associated with romantic relationships or cults, but it is rampant in the corporate world as well. The goal of the love bomber is to make you feel like you are the most special, most brilliant, most understood person in the world. This intense, positive validation is addictive. It creates a powerful high, and once you're hooked, the manipulator can begin to introduce criticism and demands, knowing you will do anything to get back to that initial feeling of euphoria. I consulted on a case involving a promising young manager, let's call her Sarah, who was hired by a very charismatic and successful division head. For the first month, her boss was incredible. He praised her ideas in meetings, sent emails to senior leadership CCing her on her brilliant contributions, and took her out to lunch to mentor her. Sarah felt like she had finally found the perfect job. She was on top of the world. Then it started to change. He began making small, unreasonable demands, asking her to work all weekend on a low-priority task, taking credit for her work in a major presentation. When she showed any hesitation, the praise would vanish, replaced by cold disappointment. "I thought you were a team player, Sarah. I'm surprised." She found herself constantly scrambling to win back his approval, to get another hit of that initial validation. Her professional judgment was completely compromised by her emotional dependency on his praise. He wasn't her boss, he was her dealer. The psychology is rooted in our most basic need for belonging and validation. The love bomber creates an intense, artificial bond that makes the victim feel seen and cherished. This flood of positive emotion effectively silences the logical brain's alarm bells about red flags, like isolation from colleagues or controlling behavior. It's a powerful form of conditioning. So, I want you to think about this. Have you ever been so swept up in someone's positive attention, a boss, a friend, a partner, that you found yourself agreeing to things that, in hindsight, were not in your best interest? Did their approval become something you felt you had to earn? Recognizing the difference between genuine appreciation and overwhelming, strategic flattery is a critical survival skill. Understanding the traps is one thing. Disarming them is another. This isn't about learning complex psychological tricks. It's about cultivating simple, disciplined habits that create space between a manipulator's attempt and your response. Think of it as building a mental immune system. The most effective defense you can deploy in the heat of the moment is the STOP protocol. It's an emergency brake for your mind, an acronym that FBI agents and crisis negotiators use to disrupt a manipulator's rhythm. S. Slow down. Manipulators thrive on urgency. They want you to act now, think later. By deliberately slowing the interaction down, you give your rational brain a chance to come back online. Simply say, "I need some time to think about this," or "I'll have to get back to you on that." This single step can shatter their entire script. T. Trust your instincts. That little knot in your stomach, that nagging feeling that something isn't quite right, that's your subconscious mind, a powerful pattern recognition machine that has picked up on subtle cues your conscious mind missed. Smart people often make the mistake of dismissing this feeling as illogical. This is a catastrophic error. Your intuition is data. Acknowledge it. O. Outside check. Manipulators work to isolate you. They create a bubble where their voice is the only one you hear. Break that bubble. Run the situation by a trusted colleague, a mentor, your spouse, or a friend. Simply verbalizing the situation to a neutral third party can expose its absurdity. "He wants me to wire $5,000 to a new vendor I've never heard of and not tell anyone?" It sounds much different when you say it out loud. P. Professional boundaries. Know what your professional and personal boundaries are before you're tested. What are you willing to do? And what is a hard no? I don't discuss confidential client information. I don't make financial decisions over the phone. When you have these rules predefined, you don't have to invent them under pressure. You just have to state them. Another powerful tool is to ask clarifying questions. Manipulators operate from a script that is often wide but shallow. It's designed to sound good on the surface, but it can't stand up to scrutiny. By asking simple, direct questions, you force them off script. "Can you walk me through the technical reason for that request again? Who else is aware of this situation? Where in the company policy does it state this procedure?" A legitimate person will have no problem answering these questions. A manipulator will often become evasive, defensive, or try to turn the pressure back on you. Their discomfort is a massive red flag. Finally, for this section, let's talk about emotional composure. A manipulator wants an emotional reaction. Your fear, your excitement, your anger, these are the handles they use to control you. When you refuse to give them that reaction, they lose their power. When you feel that spike of emotion, panic from an urgent threat, elation from over-the-top praise, Train yourself to take one deep breath before you speak or act. This tiny pause can be the difference between reacting emotionally and responding logically. In the interrogation room, the person who controls their emotions controls the room. The same is true in a negotiation, a sales pitch, or a conversation with a manipulative family member. Stay calm, measured, and detached. Your composure is a shield. So, here's your reflection. When you're under pressure, what is your default reaction? Do you speed up or slow down? Do you trust your gut or do you rationalize it away? Practice the STOP protocol in low-stakes situations. The next time a salesperson pressures you, try saying, "I'll need to think about that and get back to you." Feel the power that comes from taking back control of the timeline. Let's finish with a few more defenses that are profoundly simple yet incredibly effective. The first is the strategic use of silence. In our fast-paced world, we see silence as awkward, something to be filled. A manipulator counts on this. They will make an outrageous request or a flimsy statement and then wait for you to fill the void. Don't embrace the silence. After they speak, simply pause. Look at them calmly for a few extra seconds. The psychological pressure on them to fill that space becomes immense. More often than not, they will start talking, and what comes out is pure gold. They'll start over-explaining, backtracking, or revealing details that contradict their original story. In an interrogation, some of my most important confessions came not after a question, but in the long, uncomfortable silence that followed a weak answer. Silence forces the other person to show their hand. Next is documentation. Manipulators fear accountability. They operate in the gray areas, in verbal agreements and off-the-record conversations. Your defense is to create a record. After a concerning conversation, send a follow-up email. It can be polite and non-confrontational. "Hi, John. Just wanted to recap our conversation to make sure I have it right. You've asked me to process this payment to the new account number X. Please reply to confirm that this is correct." This simple act does two things. First, it creates a paper trail, which is a powerful deterrent to anyone with bad intentions. Second, it forces them to either commit to their lie in writing or back down. 9 times out of 10, the manipulator will suddenly find a reason to change course. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, cultivate your support network. This is your personal board of directors, your reality check. A manipulator's primary strategy is to isolate you, to make you feel like you're alone. The best defense is to never be alone. Have a small circle of trusted peers or mentors you can confide in. When something feels off, call one of them. The simple act of saying, "Does this sound right to you?" can save you from a world of trouble. Your network provides perspective, validates your instincts, and reminds you that you're not crazy. The smartest defense is admitting you're not immune. FBI agents, spies, police officers, they train constantly for this, they debrief with their teams, and they still get fooled. So why would you be any different? Rely on your people. So let's recap. We've learned that intelligence is not immunity. Your own mind, your biases, your overconfidence can be turned against you. We've seen the manipulator's playbook, from pretexting and fear cycles to the subtle poison of the foot-in-the-door technique. But we've also armed you with defenses. The STOP protocol, the power of clarifying questions, emotional composure, silence, documentation, and the strength of your network. These are your shields. Your awareness is your real weapon. If the most secure agencies in the world can be fooled, so can anyone. But now, you can learn to spot the invisible scripts being run on you every day. You can choose not to play the game. If you found this breakdown valuable, subscribe for more insights into the psychology of manipulation and influence. Our next video is How to Read Anyone in 30 Seconds. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been manipulated or seen one of these tactics in action? Share your story in the comments below. There's no shame in it. By sharing, we all learn to be a little bit smarter and a little bit safer.